Hey guys, it's Mahoney. Yeah. I didn't do the selfie stick thing. I'll get that for next week. So Tuesday, time for another Tuesday tip. This time it's actually going to be on Tuesday. I actually had several people ask me to talk about this over the past week or so, and the conversation was that at least in my area, that there's a lot of talk about people saying, I don't want to hire a local attorney because I don't want my attorney to be in cahoots with the judge or with the state's attorney or so-and-so. And, I think it's, first of all, I think it's common in any community, especially smaller communities, that we think if we go to a larger community or we go further away for any type of specialty that we get a better product. And for some things, that could be true. I mean, if you've got a patent infringement lawsuit involving, Dow Chemical, you're probably going to want to have a big firm from a big city who's done something like that before. The reality is, with any case that you have, you want to have a lawyer that has handled those cases in the past, has had success handling those cases in the past, and is familiar with the judge that you're in front of. There's an old adage, a good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judge. And cases tend to be regional, depending a great deal on the case. I mean, there's a big difference between a criminal case and a divorce case and a personal injury case. And you can tell that the issue of knowing the judge and knowing the area is important, because when people do hire outside attorneys from other areas, when those attorneys come to town, they at a minimum contact local lawyers and talk to them about the judge and the situation and what things are going to be like. And a lot of times they'll hire a local lawyer to help them out. So like, let's say, if in my town, if you went and hired Levine and Perricone out of Chicago, they've brought me in as local counsel on their cases before when it came time to a jury trial, because I'm familiar with the area, I'm familiar with the juries, and I'm familiar with the judge. Same thing has happened with Al Salvis' firm. So, just because you go to another area doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a better product. You want somebody who's familiar with your case, the type of case, does it a lot, and is familiar with the judge. Now, there's times where you want an outside attorney. If you've got a criminal case and you think the police are not on the up and up, then you want an attorney from outside of the area, because they're going to have to come in and they're going to have to do things that are unpopular that maybe a local attorney won't do. If you've got something that's very specific and a local attorney isn't as focused, we're not supposed to say specialized in the state of Illinois, isn't as focused on that type of area, then you might need to travel. But you never know. I mean, most good trial attorneys are not in big firms. Most good trial attorneys are on their own or in smaller firms. They don't want to deal with bigger firm politics. They don't want to deal with bigger firm stuff. Most good trial attorneys, first of all, if you're a good trial attorney, you're pretty good at any trial, but they tend to get interested in specific areas. And so just ask them. I mean, a good lawyer should tell you, here's what I do, here's how much of it I've done, here's how much success I've had, here's how many cases I've had in front of this judge, here's how important it is. And if they're not free to give you that particular type of information, then, maybe you want to go talk to somebody else. Use your gut. When you're talking to any professional, if you get a good gut feel about what that person is saying, then I think that's a good indication that they know what they're saying. My grandmother used to tell me, when you're talking to any professional, whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, accountant, tax person, whatever, if what they're saying makes sense to you, then they probably know what they're saying. If what they're saying doesn't make sense, then you should kind of ask yourself, maybe I want to go talk to somebody else. The whole idea, by the way, of anybody being in cahoots with anybody, that's just not a very realistic approach as to how things are. I mean, I have heard of situations in bigger cities where somebody is able to influence a judge on something very kind kind of small in a particular case, maybe one way or another, but in smaller areas, judges are not interested in doing anything that would risk their position. They're going to go out of their way to make sure that things look like they're even-handed. On the federal system, federal judges, they are there to do their job, and they're appointed for life, and nobody's going to influence them in any way. They're not going to be pushed one way or another. And in fact, if a lawyer tries to do that, the resistance is going to be bad. You know, and let's say there was a lawyer that was in cahoots with the judge. Don't you want a lawyer that's in cahoots with the judge? I mean, and do you think that the lawyer's really out to work against you for some reason? I mean, quite frankly, I've known lawyers and judges my whole life and been around them my whole life, and that's just not really the way they think. I mean, these are people that have a lot of independence and a lot of pride. They're somewhat competitive. So even if they know the judge and even if they know each other, that doesn't mean they're not going to go in there and do everything they can in order to win your case. Believe me, you know, I spent a good deal of my practice with people on the other side that I was friends with in front of judges that I knew very well and even socialized with. And that didn't mean anything when it came time to walk into the courtroom. That the advantage that a lawyer has in that situation is they know the judge. And that's really what you want. You want a lawyer that does this type of case that you have a lot and that knows this judge if it matters. Some cases it doesn't matter that much. You know, the bigger cases, it doesn't matter that much. The case is the case. But cases like a divorce case, it matters. You want somebody that knows the judge because those cases vary tremendously from court to court. So you want somebody that's familiar with what this particular judge is going to do in this particular situation. If it's a criminal case, you know, the smaller the criminal case, the more that the lawyer's knowledge of the judge is going to be important. If it's a big case, you know, and I'm talking about like murder, you know, then the judge's role is going to be, you know, that case is more likely to go to trial. And then you want somebody who's familiar with local juries. I mean, that's what's more important. So the issue of, well, I'm going to get a better product if I go out of town. Well, maybe. Depends on the particular case, and you might. The real question that you want to ask is, you want somebody that knows the landscape where you're going, and you want somebody that really handles this type of case a great deal. That's the most important thing. How many of these cases do you handle? How often do you do these types of cases? How often do you do trials? What type of success have you had with these types of cases? What percentage of your practice are these types of cases? So, you know, if you were in talking to me, I could tell you that, you know, 97% of my practice is personal injury litigation. Out of that, probably 80% is car wrecks. Maybe it's a little bit lower than that now. You know, 60% is car wrecks. Probably half of that is trucking litigation, since I do a ton of that. And I've done that in multiple states, you know, all over. I've done car wrecks all over the state of Illinois. So, you know, I'm very familiar with those particular areas. I'm becoming more and more familiar with nursing home litigation. You know, but medical malpractice, I haven't handled as many of those cases, and I'll be the first to tell my clients when they come in. I've done some of this, but it's not been my primary focus up till now. And if that means that they want to go shop somewhere else, then by all means, then that's what they should do. So, you know, lawyers should be upfront with you with regards to all those things. And if you're getting a bad vibe from the lawyer, to use a California term, well, then go talk to somebody else. But location doesn't necessarily tell you much about skill. My dad was a federal magistrate for 40 years, and he had lawyers from all over the country in front of him all the time. And he would be the first to tell you that many, many, many times the lawyers from the smaller towns ran circles around the guys from the bigger cities, quite frankly, because they'd spent a lot more time in a courtroom. They were a lot more familiar with the courtroom. You know, some of the guys in the big cities, if you're in a litigation department at Meyer Brown, you haven't been in a courtroom until you've been working for 10 years. Whereas the guys in the small towns, I mean, I was in court before I was even licensed to practice law. And so they're able to communicate to judges. They're able to communicate to juries much better than some of the big litigation firms. So, you know, location doesn't necessarily mean anything. Use your common sense. Make sure it's somebody who focuses on that area. I can't say the word specialized because I'm in the state of Illinois. We can't say that. and make sure they handle a lot of these cases. And if it's a case where the judge's rulings are going to really matter, then make sure it's somebody that is very familiar with the judge. So a divorce case, a smaller criminal case, especially a divorce case, you want somebody that's very familiar with that judge in a divorce or a paternity or something like that. As usual, my disclaimer, I'm only licensed in the state of Illinois. This is not designed to give you legal advice. This is not designed to create an attorney-client relationship. If you do have questions, you should call an attorney in your area. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm at Mahoney.com, and my phone number is 815-656-4600. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. See you next week.